Welcome to Beer and Business. You found the best podcast for entrepreneurs. We serve crafty business knowledge, comedy, and yes, beer. And now it's time for our hosts. If he were to pat you on the back, you'd list it on your resume. It's Jake Mullins. And his beer never gets warm. It just sits there, staying frosty, waiting for him. Mr. John Winnie. And if you spell his name in Scrabble, you automatically win. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Darren Flanagan.
We are back. Welcome back to Beer and Business, everybody. We're live. We did it again, Darren.
Guess what?
I actually think it's broadcasting. That's good.
I hope so. And it's August.
It is August. You know what? The last time we did this, it was July, last month.
That's crazy.
Yes. Today on the show, we have Kara Fernstrom. It worked. There she is. How are you doing, Kara? Welcome to the show. Can you hear us, Kara?
Kara's doing something.
We may be having technical difficulties. We see Kara, but do you hear us?
I do.
Oh,
there you are. Okay. I was like, man, what happened? We've been doing so good on our live casting platform, and it's not working.
Talked for like 15 minutes before, and everything worked fine.
Like, what did I do? And I broke it. Well, welcome to the show, Kara. I am really excited to talk to you. You are the host of the Conquest of Bliss podcast, and you have overcome some incredible adversity that we're going to get into today. And I think that the timing is right. But before we get into that, Kara, we have something really important that we need to talk about, Darren.
Mm-hmm. Beer.
That is the official beer of the Beer Business Podcast, Lion Creek Brewing. What are you drinking over there?
I am drinking one of their, one of their staple beers.
As my youngest son, Levi, would say, Old Trusty.
Old Trusty. Yeah.
He grabs Doritos and he's like, I'm just going to have good old trusty Doritos. So you're having good old trusty.
Good old trusty First Crush IPA.
Yes.
Yeah, this been there since they pretty much opened.
Yeah, it's a tropical style IPA. Not too heavy on the fruit.
Nope.
Not too heavy on the hops, just like perfectly balanced.
Thank you.
A little
Thank
jealous
you for
now
describing what I'm drinking.
Now that I'm describing your beer, I'm a little bit jealous. But I am drinking
What you got?
Conserve Georgia. So this has been a series,
Mm-hmm.
and there's been 2 beers that they've done seasonally. And what they do with these, Kara, is every 6-pack of this that's purchased, Lion Creek donates $1 to Conserve Georgia, which is really nice. And this particular beer, so they've had 2 that they've alternated, but now they've got a new one. This one is a blueberry apricot Berliner Weiss. It's got a pretty little can that's a little bit more colorful than their other Conserve Georgia cans. And if you know anything about beer, Berliner Weiss is a wheat beer. It's a German style, and it ranges from like tart to sour.
Mm-hmm.
This one's actually on the very mild tart side, so it's barely a tart beer. It's actually really good.
Something that
Nice color to it.
might
Smell
like.
it. Yeah, I mean, it smells really good. Oh, you're actually gonna I hope you don't have cooties. It's actually good, isn't it?
It's got nice flavor.
It does, yeah. I really like that. It's
cool,
good.
refreshing.
It's a good summer beer. I would say we're winding down summer, but in Georgia, I think we have about 3 or 4 more months of summer.
No. Here comes August,
I
and
know.
that's when they crank the furnace up even a little, although it is gorgeous out.
Yeah,
this
today is
week.
actually pretty nice.
Beautiful. But
And we want to remind you, if you have not joined us at a business networking event at Lion Creek, you need to come out. Our next one is coming up rapidly, August 11th.
a week from yesterday.
A week from yesterday. If you have not come, you need to come. This is a great event. It's a great way to meet people, other professionals in the market. 4 to 6. It's $free. You don't have to pay anything to get in. You do have to pay if you want to drink a couple of adult beverages, but their prices are very reasonable. So, yes, you should definitely come out. Every time we do this, we meet new people.
And we drink new beers.
Yes. It's
but the
it's a lot.
people are more important. But the beer was, I'll tell you what, they have one in-house.
Sounds like you're flip-flopping.
I'm going back and well, I think the more I drink, the more I enjoy the new people. No, I'm just
And the truth comes out.
No, but I always forget they've got that. So their in-house beers, they've got a crowler machine.
Oh, yes.
So I was drinking one and I was like, I got to take some of this home. Where can, is it out in the market? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, I can get a crowler though.
The ultimate roadie.
That's a big 6-pack when you're carrying 6 crawlers home.
Yeah, you need a little assistance there. You need like one of those hand trucks to walk them out. But yeah, come out and see us. We'd love to see you next week. It's free. Just go to the website, www.beer.business, and register so we know you're coming out. We want to make sure there's enough staff and that the food truck has enough food on board to handle the massive crowd that will be out there.
Yep.
Don't miss it.
It was a lot of fun, though. Because I'd spent, well as the guests and hosts of the network event, we spent a lot of time just talking to somebody and then going, "Oh, you should speak to," and taking them over and
making connections, man.
Connections. So that's
what it's all about.
Great thing.
So, Kara, we really appreciate you coming on the show. When I saw your request to come on, I knew right away that I wanted to talk to you. And to kind of kickstart this, one of the reasons why I think this conversation is so important is so many entrepreneurs are facing really challenging times right now because, all around the world, there has been varying responses to the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of them have been really extreme. And if you look at what's happened in the U.S., just from state to state, there's been very different levels of response. And many, many businesses have been destroyed or put on the ropes. Mm-hmm. And this is a time of adversity for a lot of people. And so when I heard your story, I knew that it was one of those things that could motivate and uplift some people. So really excited to get into it. What I'd like to start with is you went through something as a teenager that most of us have not. And I want you to tell us, you got addicted to drugs in a pretty bad way, did you not?
Yes. So do you want me to start at the beginning?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So when I was really, really young, I was immersed in like church life and was very, very sheltered. And there's not, different churches have different cultures and stuff. And the culture of the church that I was in happened to be pretty problematic. And it was like my whole life. We went to, Christian school and all this stuff. And once I got out of that because of some stuff that had nothing to do with like, churchness per se. Oh, do you see that?
Yeah. I do. Yeah. It's like
that's
split
bizarre.
Personality.
I don't understand what's
happening.
I don't know
what's going on with our video.
What the
platform
hell?
has worked so flawlessly until today. I don't know what's
going on. Oh my goodness.
Remove and bring her back. Try that one. Sorry,
yeah.
folks.
Yeah, let's see what happens if we do this.
Oh gosh. Okay. Let me see if I can change the settings. Let's just go like that. Switch cameras.
This is the fun though. I mean,
see, we are actually troubleshooting live on that. This is how you know, folks, that we are actually live.
Okay, we're just gonna go with this camera and hope that it doesn't do the same. So
there you go.
It's much darker. But anyways, so I eventually ended up going to public school and was bullied, as often happens to kids that age. Unfortunately, I didn't have any real life skills to work with at the time because I'd been like, it doesn't really matter which culture it was. I was just very sheltered, right, from understanding the workings of the outside world. And I remember one day, one of my new friends at school asked to go into the forest and drink something called Newfie Screech, which is a kind of
Newfie Screech,
a kind of alcohol from Newfoundland, which is the other side of the country, and it's ridiculously hard. And so I got really, really drunk, and that was kind of the beginning of the end for that. And I was 12 at the time, and so you look like you have a question.
No, it sounds awful.
Screech.
It's the sounds you make when you go to the bathroom later or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's like worse than like a moonshine or 151. Is so gross.
All I'm picturing is like a glass of like cloudy liquid with little bits floating in it.
Yeah,
is that far from the truth?
I don't remember super strongly.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's
12. I don't think she was really concerned about
and drinking like 181 proof. So
yeah, it was makes sense. It was no bueno. So so then it just kind of, I started drinking a lot more because I felt more accepted and I felt more a part of, and I didn't really have social skills to work with that. So it was very much the classic peer pressure kind of drinking to be cool thing. And unfortunately, when I was 14, so my family was moving, and my brother had this really, really big house party. And at that house party, so I was given mushrooms and alcohol, and this guy took me home, and it was this really complicated situation. So he was a lot older than me, and a lot of what happened got very confusing very fast, because I had written something in my diary but couldn't remember. And anyways, point is that this got out and the whole town found out. So it became this sort of super trauma. Yeah, like it was very, very complicated and terrible for both me and the other party. And then I finally moved, and I don't want to say of course, but so I didn't have access to therapy or anything like that. I was quite young. And it would have been 2004. So I feel like therapy just wasn't really an option that parents thought of after traumatic situations. It's kind of very much just go with it. And so my parents, not knowing how to deal with me, sent me to Missouri to live with some people that they knew from, do you know what Pogo Games is?
Pogo Games? No.
So Pogo Games was like an online game platform, and you would talk to people in chat. So they knew this family from Pogo Games, and they sent me there, which they, I think, realize now was a terrible decision.
So wait a minute.
You met some,
Hold on.
I know
Your
Pogo
parents realized you had a really traumatic experience as a child, were drinking and into some bad stuff, and then sent you to a family they met through video games? Am I getting this right?
Mostly. So I don't think that they recognize.
What did I miss?
Well, I don't think they recognized that it was a traumatic experience. All that they had was their experience with me acting out.
Okay,
drinking,
so you were
and
trouble and
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't like, oh, she's traumatized, let's re-traumatize her, because they're not monsters. Just make mistakes.
big one.
A weird, it's
an online. Their avatar's really cute. I trust them.
What could go
Let's
wrong?
send you to Missouri to go stay with these people.
Yeah.
Okay, so continue. Sorry, I just had to make sure that I was getting that right.
No, it's fine because it's bizarre, and
in the Kiss Me state.
I don't know.
Missouri is the Show Me state.
The Show Me state. Yeah, I was. Yeah, that's
the only one I know.
Send your teenager there to live with a stranger.
Yeah.
Thankfully, on the bright side, they turned out to be fantastic human beings and exactly who they presented themselves as. Yes, but of course, the effects of that, of being sent away to a stranger, all of that was really challenging. And so when I finally returned, I don't know how long it was, a few months later, there wasn't really any resources still on the other side, but I'd started smoking cigarettes. So there was that. And then I started using MDMA, well, actually ecstasy, I suppose, with my friend group, which eventually turned into cocaine. I remember doing cocaine with 3 of my friends, and we pushed the dresser against her bedroom door so that her mom wouldn't come in. And it was this big thing. And then we pretended like we were on ecstasy. And before we knew it, we were doing cocaine every weekend, and then in the middle of the week. And just 1 second, please. Sorry.
You're good.
And so we were doing cocaine like really regularly at that point, and it's so hard to keep track of everything. So I got kicked out of my parents' house when I was 16 and moved in with I guess now he's my ex-boyfriend, but then he was just my friend because he asked me to move in and be his girlfriend. And we lived together for a while, and that was when I first tried crack, was with someone that he knew, because it was in a different city than I'd lived in, so I didn't know anybody. So this girl that I was hanging out with offered for me to try crack, and I tried it, and I remember thinking it was like it wasn't anything super fantastic. It didn't really appeal to me at the time, and I just continued doing a lot of cocaine. When I moved back to my parents when I was 17, I had some serious mental health issues. I did attempt suicide a few times. And then my uncle at the time had lived with me, and I remember I was sitting on the computer, just like, I don't know what I was doing on the computer. And he's like, "Hey, Kara, do you want a hoot?" And I was like, "What?" And I assumed he was talking about pot. And so I went outside, and he had a crack pipe. And of course I recognized it because I'd tried it the previous year. And I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure." And he goes, "Oh, come on. It's no big deal. Your parents aren't home." And so I did it. And once that boundary was crossed, once I started, like I allowed it, he was offering it all the time. So it became a lot more accessible than cocaine, because cocaine I had to go out and get, and I had to make sure that I had, like, a certain amount of cash. With the crack, I only needed like half the cash because he'd pitch in with me and he'd bring it right to the house. So we started doing crack all the time. My brother as well. And, and it wasn't until much later, much at the time, it seemed like a long time. Probably 3 months later that he tried to sleep with me. He propositioned me, and, it's hard to explain. It's like the whole, not really like you owe me. Like it wasn't as direct as that, but like sort of became very clear that that's why he was offering me so much crack, as well as getting it for cheaper. I mean, yeah. And so that's kind of the story. Do you have any questions before?
No, it's just, I mean, I do have some questions actually. First of all,
can I pick my jaw up off the table?
Yeah, no, you've been through a lot of stuff, obviously into a lot of different drugs. I guess one of my first questions to you, I've never done it, but how addictive is crack, and was it for you? I've heard it's a very addictive drug.
I do think that it varies. Like I've known people who have tried crack and not picked it up. That was my original case with it. It's pretty addictive though. Like it doesn't take very long, because I mean, like the thing that for me personally, my experience with both cocaine and crack is that it gave me other non-consequential problems to deal with. It gave me something that I would call really similar to anxiety, a feeling of anxiety. And I was really hyper conscious of very superficial things. I was going to say super superficial.
It's a double super. It's better than a regular super, Derek.
I like your toilet paper,
Sorry,
Mr. President.
Only the goldest rolls of all the golden
Sounds
rolls.
like her uncle was super,
Grace
super.
my
But,
toilet.
yeah, what a role model to look up to.
Yeah, I know that's the other thing too. So as I'm sitting here listening to your story, being a teenager is hard enough. I mean, being a teenager is just like the most confusing, difficult time in your life. And then for you to have gotten mixed up in the wrong crowd and doing drugs, and then you've got an uncle, a member of the family, somebody you're supposed to look up to, now propositioning you. Oh my gosh, it's just that's horrible.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it was a good time.
But
But
should you? Because it sounds awful.
Well, did your brother get addicted to crack as well?
So my brother was already addicted to crack at that point.
Okay.
Just, that kind of family, I guess. But he'd already been addicted, so him and my uncle would smoke it together as well. As far as I know, he didn't proposition my brother, but I have no idea, really. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, he was really addicted to drugs for a really, really long time. And I mean, obviously that's not an excuse, but he did get clean, and then immediately got lung cancer that metastasized to his brain and took him. So like, I feel like it's hard for me to be angry, because I feel like life sorts itself out.
It's a nice way of saying karma's a bitch.
It is actually. It's horrible.
So, yeah.
So you find yourself then at 17, addicted to crack, and you're getting it from your uncle. Then he propositions you. Where does the story go from there?
Well, so I was using it a lot, and there was this one moment. So I would do this thing, and I thought I was so clever, and it's honestly like the dumbest thing ever. And really, I think puts a picture of what I thought like when I was 17 is I would go into the washroom, because I couldn't do it in my room for some reason. I have no idea why. Oh, because it was carpeted, and I didn't want to drop it on carpet because then you can never find it. Because crack's a hell of a drug. And so I would do it in the washroom. But of course, we were I was a teenager, so I lived at home. So there's lots of people. So I would announce to the house that I was going to take a bath so that no one would bother me in the bathroom for an hour, which I find really funny because it's so ridiculous. Like I feel like it's the most suspicious thing in the world. But I would announce that I was going to take a bath. And then one day I looked in the mirror, and so I just smoked a bunch of crack, and it makes your head really light and then causes similar effects to cocaine. And then, so I looked in the mirror, and I remember just like, it's so hard to explain this feeling, but it was like utter hopelessness, like all of this, potential, this idea of a future, everything that I thought that I could have sort of flashed before my eyes in a proverbial sense. Like it just sort of hit me. It felt like it was all hitting me at once, that like this ain't it, like I really, really didn't want to be someone who was addicted to crack. And I mean, I was 17, 18, at the time. And then, so when that happened, I decided high on crack that I was going to do something, and I didn't know quite what it was. So I ended up the next week going to the drug addictions counselor that was assigned to my school, because I went to an alternative school. So there was like an entire like system set up because so many of us had issues with addiction. And so I went to, her name was Marnie. She's a fantastic human being, and she helped me. Now, it's worth noting that at different points I had tried detox and like local programs to get clean. And unfortunately, every time I did that, I would call my mom and manipulate her to bring me home and not get clean. So I remember saying, I need to make it impossible to not. I need to do something. And so she helped me do a lot of research, and we found a place in Montreal. So Montreal is like, I don't know, 2,000 miles or so away from here. So not somewhere I could walk home, and not somewhere that my mom could just on impulse pick me up. And so it took months to get into the program. There was so much paperwork, and I was high on crack pretty much the whole time that I was getting into it. And the last time that I smoked crack was on the way to the plane, or right before I got picked up for the plane. Yeah, and then
all the way into the rehab center, huh?
Pretty much, yeah. And my mom had given me, I remember she gave me like 20 or $50, and she's like, I'm so proud of you. So here's some money, and you can kind of start your fresh life. And of course I spent it on crack. So it was not my proudest moment. And then, yeah, I mean, I still, I have a weird position on drugs, because I've never done coke or crack or anything like that, but I'm very anti-prohibitionist. I think that the biggest issue that we have that leads to addiction is a lack of education because of the stigma and prohibition.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and we could get into that conversation. But what I'd like to do, we've got some other things to unpack in your life, because this is not the only adversity and big thing that you've had to overcome. But I want you to go back to that process of cleaning up and what it was like, because this is really kind of the meat of the conversation. For those that are listening to your story and thinking, man, that's a really tough place for you to get to. I'm curious, what were the feelings that you had when you got there? How was the process of rising up and overcoming this for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I got there, and it was a unique program. It wasn't 12-step, which is pretty uncommon. It was based on, I think, loosely based on military. So it was very, very strict and really challenging. I remember so many moments of just so much disbelief in what my life had become, who I had become. I really, really struggled a lot with what's often called the victim mentality. So anything that happened, if it were peripherally related to me, I framed myself as a victim. And I was so unbelievably helpless in those moments, and hopeless feeling like everything was happening to me and I didn't have any power. And so the process was really, really painful and difficult. There was a lot of unpacking of sexual abuse and unpacking of obviously abandonment issues from the Missouri thing. And it was really raw. And I tried to leave so many times. So I'm really glad that I'd cornered myself, because I really tried to leave. I tried to manipulate my mom. I would throw the Missouri thing in her face and all sorts of stuff that I'm really not proud of. And it took a really long time. And like, even at the end of my program, which was about 10 months long, I was still struggling with a lot of the sort of life skill sides of things. I was already coping with like I had this, I don't know what you would call it, like a tryst with this other guy that was in rehab that in normal circumstances I probably never would have, but it was just, trying to feed that giant hole, that pain from being rejected, the pain from knowing that a lot of like it's one of those weird things, because it's like, it's not your fault, especially as a kid, it's not your fault that you get addicted, but you are the one making the choices, even under the addiction. So it's this sort of weird dichotomy where you don't want to victim blame, but at the same time you don't want to have the victim mentality.
Well, were you doing it? I mean, you say at 12, this is when it started for you. Mm-hmm. And it's not your fault. And it's like, well, you still had a choice at that point. You're probably obviously not making the right choice, but was it escapism for you? Is that why you continued after that first time of, getting drunk on
Newfie Screech
or Squeech, Nuki Squeech, or whatever it is. But I mean,
Newfoundland Screech.
Did you feel that it's a coping mechanism? Drugs and alcohol are a way for a lot. It's, a lot of folks who have that addiction are escaping something and they don't want to feel whatever they're feeling and have to deal with it. Is that what you had?
That's a good question. I think that it's a combination of things. It definitely started as a desire to fit in and a desire to be cool. In time, it sort of developed, I wouldn't say escapism as much as a crutch. Like, it's hard to socialize. So instead of learning to socialize, I'll get drunk enough that I don't care if I'm bad at socializing. Mm-hmm. Things like that. More so than just escapism, because escapism is something that I was already doing through books and media. And I mean, if you scroll Facebook for hours, you're still doing the escapism thing. Right. And then as far as like the, I was 12 and yes, it was a choice, but the question of if that's the choice in the way that we think of it is really complicated, because your brain isn't even halfway to being fully developed, especially the prefrontal cortex, the part that recognizes consequence.
This doesn't actually happen until your early 20s.
Yeah.
That's Darren Flanagan, never.
Not saying it's a bad thing. Oh, I thought that was, I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. Is that what it is?
Something exactly like that.
I want to ask you another question about that, because it sounds like when you really, truly needed your mom, she was there to help you.
Absolutely.
I mean, she may not have made the right decision in the first place in Missouri, but was she just not around otherwise? Was she absent, or were you just really at odds with her and you're like, just leave me alone, let me do my thing, as some typical teenagers are? Was your home life like kind of messed up that you're like, I'd like these drugs and alcohol and I don't have to deal with this other shit at home?
So yes, my home life was super messed up. But it's kind of a combination of both of those things. The situation was that my parents' relationship was an unbelievably toxic dynamic. My dad tended to be very controlling and my mom tended to be very codependent, and basically I would say forfeited her personality, forfeited her ability to support. And so she was present physically and she loved us very, very much, but she was spending so much energy trying to make a relationship that didn't work that she didn't really have the energy to be as present as she probably would have now probably would have liked to have been.
Meaning the energy to make the relationship with your father work.
Yeah, she was spending all of her energy to make the relationship with my dad work, and then when we needed her in an emotional capacity, it just wasn't there.
Gotcha.
So let's get back to your rehab. So you went into rehab. You said you came out 10 months later, and you came out clean.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't go back to drugs. I'm curious about a couple of things. Number one, how difficult the physical withdrawal was for you. But then number two, I'm curious about when you feel like you became clean. Was it a process slowly, or was there a moment in that treatment where, bing, you realized you had made a breakthrough and this was going to forever change you?
Okay, so the first question, a little bit of physical withdrawal, but crack doesn't really have like what you think of when you think of like heroin or alcohol addiction, where you have like severe, like you're in danger withdrawal symptoms. But you're not comfortable, but it's certainly not something that you're going to be going to a hospital for or anything like that. And then as far as whether or not it was a gradual process or a switch, I mean, I'd have to say gradual process. I mean, from my experience, addiction has a lot less to do with the substance and a lot more to do with how you treat and approach the substance. Like in the same way that you can have a beer or wine with dinner, you know, or you can be an alcoholic who's destroying their own and other people's lives. The same is true of drugs, but because there's so little understanding of it, you know, it's better. Abstinence is better than abuse for sure. Mm-hmm. So it took a really long time to kind of unpack why I was addicted at the moment, what I was trying to get out of it, and find replacements for the things. Because originally, you know, it wasn't this big complicated beast, but by the time I was in rehab at 18, there was 6 years of active addictive behavior that I needed to unpack and figure out. And
so I'm curious, overcoming this, you know, that 10-month process, as you look back on it, what were the keys to success? Was it, you know, just hard work and commitment? Was it changing your, you know, your internal dialogue, dealing with things? What was it that helped you become successful in that process?
Honestly, I think probably the biggest thing that's helped me be successful in that is like cost benefit analyses. I don't know what the word is. Mm-hmm. Analysis.
More than one analysis. That's another way of saying it. Sorry, you do not have to put up with me. You can fire them off if you need to.
Yep. So you were saying, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would just basically try to be more mindful of I guess mindfulness really is sort of like when I look at a choice that I'm making, it's like, okay, why, what's the benefit, and what's the cost? And if the cost seems high, not even necessarily higher than the benefit, but just high, I can look at alternative options to meet that need. And that's probably like that concept, that idea of meeting the need in other ways helped me to get clean and also helped me to know myself better.
Now, this is really interesting because
I could smoke crack today, or I could have this nice cup of herbal tea. Cost and now.
I could hang out with somebody interesting and dynamic,
or you could hang out
or
with me.
Darren Flanagan. I mean, I get it. It's all coming. Yeah, it's sinking in. What I find really interesting about this, though, is I would have it. Oh, look, there's an ass at the table. If you were watching on video, you'd see that Darren just picked up a donkey.
Go ahead.
I would have thought that you would have told me that the answer was something much more emotional. But what you just shared with me was a very pragmatic way of thinking about your actions, which is really shocking to me, honestly. I would not have thought that. And I'm wondering, do you think that that's the that's the experience for a lot of people that get clean, or do you think it's really different based on the person?
I think it's really different based on the person. Every person relates to different things differently. And I think the biggest reason that the pragmatic approach worked for me is because there was a lot of emotional damage. I mean, I still got a lot of emotional damage, you know?
Me too.
You'll have it after this being on our podcast as well. So
Sorry. We didn't tell you about that part, did we? Some of the things, it's in the fine print.
Yeah. But like I really struggle emotionally, and I think the reason that it worked so well for me is because if I based my progress, or like if I build systems in my like world based on my emotion, it's very unreliable. So, cause like, you know, like there are days that I cry a lot, and then there are days that, you know, and I mean, besides PTSD, like I don't have any, like I don't have mood disorders or anything. I'm just an emotional person.
Sure.
And emotions are chaotic and hard to predict. So like for me personally, because my emotions tend to be very free flowing and chaotic, I needed something more grounding. I'd built the problem on emotion, and I saw how well that went, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And it's just really interesting to hear you say that, because I wouldn't have thought it. Honestly, I would have thought that most of this would have been emotional.
simple T-chart. That's it. Boom. Here's the positive. I want to do this. I want to do this. Here's the positives. Here's the negatives. Add them up. Yep. This is the better one to do right now.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. And then and you learned this while you were at rehab. Somebody taught you that. Correct, Kara?
Yeah.
And then what about, did they focus anything on like, oh, you need to have a better positive self-worth and look at yourself in a more beautiful light than you're giving yourself credit for? And did you find that to be?
She was at like basic training.
I know.
We're
Well, it's a
yelling
little
at
bit,
her and stuff.
Well, honestly, the one thing that comes to mind for me is Make Your Bed, the book Make Your Bed.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Admiral,
but as she
what's his
said,
name?
that type of scheduling would not work for her, but this
Right.
cost analysis benefit. But positive self-worth, did they try to help you with that as well? Or did you not have a negative aspect, look on
Oh,
yourself?
definitely had a negative. I mean, I still struggle with that. But I think, they did teach us about emotions. So it was like, still was a rehab, even though, like when I say it was very militaristic, it was hyper scheduled, and they had, like we had to make our beds, with the military corner things, and like sort of like as tight to bounce a quarter or whatever. Everything had to be folded a specific way. But they did teach us about emotion, but not that I can recall much about self-worth. It was more about taking responsibility, ownership, a lot of stuff about understanding the difference between perception and objective reality. We had to say, like, I perceive, like, instead of saying, like, say I was mad at you, Darren, I am not allowed to say, like, you cut me off or whatever thing. I don't know. I have to say it was my perception that you cut me off, or I experienced it like this. And as chunky as that sounds in conversation, when everyone was doing it, it worked really well. So as far as the emotional stuff, I think really there was more of a focus on teaching us to zoom out of our emotion than to zoom in.
That's really interesting. And I really do like, too, is we're talking about overcoming adversity, taking responsibility. And I mean, that's a big part of it. Even like where we're trying to appeal to entrepreneurs from a business perspective, a lot of times, you said earlier, you're getting caught up in the victim mentality. Even when people are, down on their luck and, they've been kicked in the face, whatever, the person that's going to find success is the one that says, okay, this is the reality of where I'm at. I need to take responsibility for it and move on. Even if parts of it aren't your fault, which is one of the things that I really have a lot of compassion for right now, because a lot of people's businesses got crushed by no fault of their own just because of the government's response to COVID, right?
Right.
But you still have to take responsibility for where you're at now, right? If you find yourself with no business, if you find yourself with a business that's struggling or without a job or whatever the case might be, well, okay, that happened, but now you have to take responsibility for where you are. And I'm wondering, did they focus more on taking responsibility for the moment or what happened in the past?
I mean, well, with me in particular, because I had that victim mentality so hard, they definitely focused more, like my, what would you call it? Like my personal counselor, caseworker, that's the name. So she would focus with me on basically unpacking how every single story was me as a victim, even the ones that were innocuous. But as a rule, yeah, it was more about general fault versus responsibility. And, like just basically just what you said is someone can be someone can be someone else's fault, but it doesn't change that the responsibility lies with you. They can't unhurt you. They can't undo things. So like it was more about teaching the concept, I think, than like, and then you can kind of apply it as needed. But there was definitely a focus with my caseworker on me in the past.
Yeah, definitely a transferable skill that you can use in other places. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about some other adversities that you face. So, for those that don't know, today you host a podcast. You also own, is it an art studio?
No, it's graphic design.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, so you do graphic design work, artwork. So you've got some success that you found in life, but it has not come easy because I understand that you have fibromyalgia and sarcoidosis.
Yeah.
Is that
wow.
right?
Yeah, you pronounced those perfectly. I'm very impressed.
So talk to us a little bit about how that manifested in your life and what that's been like and how you've dealt with that too.
Okay, so I was a teenager still when I started having chronic pain, but it wasn't super significant. I remember I went to the doctor, and he said it was because I was overweight, which is super funny because I was underweight, but that's a whole other thing.
I've never seen a fat crack addict.
Well,
a successful crack addict. They're really not.
Yeah, I mean it's
large people.
I know that's kind of the opposite.
Am I wrong there, Carol?
Yeah, no, I was severely underweight at the time.
Yeah.
I get it, man.
I've grown it all back. It's all good. But
now you're healthy.
That's right.
Right. You got to be comfortable with who you are.
Yeah,
That's what
and
counts.
I'm surprisingly happy with my body considering everything. Anyways, okay, got all sidetracked. Now I'm blushing. Okay, so I was already having chronic pain, and then what happened was it got worse. I mean, I was working a job that I really enjoyed, doing inventory management, which doesn't sound exciting, but it was super fun, and I got to use Excel a lot.
No, it sounds really interesting.
Tell the accountants that are listening. They're like, "Ooh, I'm listening now."
Did somebody say spreadsheet?
I love spread. Okay, anyways, so
Ela, first in, last out. How did you operate? What was your management system?
Yes, not exactly riveting.
Go ahead.
But so I ended up having, like I said, just more and more chronic pain, and so I went to the doctor. And originally, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which is, I know now, a misdiagnosis. And they put me on a whole bunch of different drugs, and a lot of those drugs had undesirable side effects. So, yeah, like I said, and then I gained a whole bunch of weight, and I ended up having to leave the working world because between the pain and the fatigue and oh my goodness, the side effects from
Just let it out.
The side effects from the medications, I ended up being just like so depressed, and I gained 75 pounds in 6 months. I couldn't believe it. So much, but yeah. And so like I was struggling with body issues, and more to the point, really, really struggling with pain. And then I saw another doctor, and he actually did some, like he palpated trigger points or whatever, and tested, and I actually had fibromyalgia. And so that kind of changed the game a lot. Fibromyalgia is, as far as I know, not lethal. Lethal? It seems really strong.
Terminal.
Terminal, yeah.
Yeah.
Just a constant ache all the way to the bone.
Yeah, essentially it's inflammation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is just pain everywhere.
Yeah, so there's some different ideas on what it could be as far as it relating to nerves and nerve receptors and stuff like that. But it's just chronic pain and fatigue, as well as some gastrointestinal issues that can come with it. Although I don't know if that's from the sarcoidosis. So fast forward a few years, and those years I'm trying to work, and then I end up getting too sick and having to go off of work, trying to work back and forth, because I'm that type. I like to work. And so I'm working at a dollar store at this point, which was probably the most depressing part, was that I only wanted to take jobs that I knew wouldn't be hurt if I had to leave. So, a dollar store where they can just easily hire someone to replace me, because I wasn't interested in, getting in the way of anyone's business. And so I was working at the dollar store, and all of a sudden I started coughing blood. And that was extremely scary. And I went, yeah, it was not the best.
Doesn't sound like it. It sounds awful.
And they did a bunch of tests, thankfully, not to be an ass or anything, but thankfully I'm in Canada where all of that stuff is covered regardless of your income or anything else. And so they did just a crazy number of tests. There was the x-rays and all sorts of stuff. And it turned out that it was sarcoidosis, which was a good thing because the alternative was lymphoma. And so they...
It's a positive way to look at it.
Yeah.
Here's my T-chart. Sarcoidosis.
Hi, everybody.
Lymphoma.
You either die or you have this.
I'll take this, whatever it is.
Oh, lucky day. It's not the die one. That's good. Not trying to make fun of your health issues, but
good.
The way that you presented it's it's either death or sarcoidosis. I'll take the sarcoidosis. I don't even know what the hell it is, but I'll take it.
They said, guess what? You've got the good kind of cancer. And he's like, what's it? There's a good kind of cancer? My brother-in-law, when he went to his doctor.
Oh, yeah. Gee,
yeah,
thanks.
It'll last
that
a
doesn't
long
sound
time.
good.
You're going to live another 25 years is what they meant. So what is sarcoidosis, by the way? Except hearing it. I remember hearing it on House one time.
House.
Could be sarcoidosis.
Yeah, it was his second favorite after lupus.
That was everything was. He's got Kawasaki syndrome. It's definitely autoimmune.
Yeah, I
Just
don't know.
Right.
So sarcoidosis, it's from what I was told by my doctors, it's not super well understood, but it is categorized by granulomas, which are non-cancerous inflammatory growths, clusters of cells that are inflammatory, and they grow all sorts of places. So the comedian Bernie Mac actually passed away from a heart attack from sarcoidosis. And so it can grow on any of your organs, so your skin or other organs. I don't know why I started listing organs. Or your brain. And it happened to be in my lungs, and they were able to, the last they checked, it was no longer in my lungs, but there are symptoms, I get these, bumps under my skin that are really hard, and knotting in my muscles that I'm not sure if it's from sarcoidosis or fibromyalgia, and it can sort of just show up in any organs. Of a second cousin or some shit who has a pacemaker from sarcoidosis and stuff like that. So that's the basics.
What you have is you have two different conditions, both of which have pain and inflammation. Mm-hmm. And then sarcoidosis can also manifest itself on various organs and grow additional tissue, stress the organs, and ultimately can be fatal in certain circumstances, from what I understand. Which sucks. I mean, that's two very bad things.
Super sucks.
Yeah. And the worst. So I'm very familiar with fibromyalgia. My wife has fibromyalgia, and it sucks because it's just pain. It's just pain everywhere, and people with fibro, they've got different degrees of it. Some people it's mild pain. Some people it's just absolutely debilitating and can't walk and can't get around. And I think both of those conditions are conditions that doctors know a lot about, but not everything. And treatment's not really straightforward. So it's not like, oh, okay, this is what you have. Take this drug and everything will be fine. I think my wife has been seeing rheumatologists for, gosh, probably going on 8 years now. And her treatment path has been, a roller coaster, up and down, trying different things, and still not perfect after all these years. And I'm sure your experience has been the same.
Yep. They've put me on different drugs and stuff, but I basically worked out an arrangement with my doctor where if it's not a drug that I can only take as needed, then I'm not doing it, because like I've had so many side effects from different drugs and stuff. So it's like, if it's something that I can take in the moment when things are not manageable and then not be on, that's fine, because the side effects complicate things. And so, yeah, it's kind of a rock and a hard place thing, because like when I take drugs, my pain might be better, but like, maybe my cognitive function has declined significantly, or I'm having issues with my gastrointestinal system worse, or my eye, gets scleritis and turns red like crazy, or my eye pressures go up, or, it's just, it's a lot.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm curious. As a teenager, you find yourself hooked on drugs, and you go through a lot of terrible experiences, as you already talked about. Then you get yourself cleaned up. Now, as a young adult, now you're dealing with, really bad pain and other health issues. Then you find out about this sarcoidosis. What was that process like for you? Now facing another severe setback that was, impeding your ability to make a living and find value and worth in this world. What was that like?
Honestly, terrible. I remember.
Well, I wouldn't expect you to say, you know what, Jake, it was awesome. I loved it.
I'll do it again. And again and again, I'll sign up for that.
Yeah.
No.
The feeling, like the fibromyalgia, finding out about the fibromyalgia was a relief, because the rheumatoid didn't fit and it was frustrating. But the sarcoidosis, it was so scary. Like even getting diagnosed, I had to get something called a bronchoscopy, which is where they send a camera and a biopsy snipper thing down your trachea. So not the part that's supposed to have things go down it, but the part that is not. And they need you in waking sedation for obvious reasons, so that they can make sure that they're not killing you or anything like that. So they put like an eye mask over your eyes, and it slipped up, and they had me on fentanyl and some other waking sedation thing. And so I was kind of cognizant, but not really, like I wasn't quite lucid. And I swear to you, that's where alien abduction stories come from. Like, it was terrifying.
They go through your nose with the scope, right?
No, through your throat.
Oh, they did go through your mouth and down.
Yeah, so your mouth is like held open, and they've got, and like there's all these doctors that are all completely scrubbed up, and you don't really know what's going on, and it hurts. Yeah. But not like hurts like it should, it should hurt more, which is in itself scary. It's very terrible. 1 out of 10, do not recommend.
Oh, I know what I'm supposed to do when something's coming down this way.
Yeah. Getting the heebie-jeebies just hearing the story.
Fabulous.
Yeah, and then following that, I mean, I feel like breakdown is probably an understatement. The fear of dying from it was so strong, like especially because of how it was discovered, and coughing blood, and just being so convinced that I was done, that was it. And just I remember feeling so alone, like this disease that it's already kind of rare, but it's especially rare for like Caucasian people, and so like nobody I knew had anything like this. People had only ever heard of it from house. Mm-hmm. And it felt like nobody understood that it could kill me. It's like, I talk about it, and it's just like, it felt like nobody took it seriously. Yeah. And I'm sure that they did. I was just so like overwhelmed and desperate to feel safe. And I didn't feel safe.
What made you feel better? If you'd just gone out and gotten some poutine, you would have felt so much better.
I don't
actually
think so,
probably-
Darren. No, gravy and French fries is not going to fix this.
Oh, come on.
I mean,
Have you
it's
ever had
good.
poutine?
I do have a question
See,
for you.
have
though.
you had poutine?
I know.
Like,
It's actually very good.
it would have made her happy.
But did the victim mentality start to come back?
Oh yeah. Oh hell yeah. Yeah.
slip back into that one pretty easily?
I mean, I wouldn't say that I generally do, but there are times when things are really, really big that I do. Like, I mean, yeah, like I remember specifically saying like, why me? And I mean, it's one of those things that's really hard because it's like I was a victim of circumstance, but identifying as that instead of understanding it as a role that I was playing in a very specific scenario, it doesn't help me.
Well, no.
You know?
Yeah, I'm sure one of the questions you probably came to at one point is like, why me? Why do I have this? And then you go, well, maybe it's because I stressed my body out so bad when I was younger and it broke down part of my immune system to fight something off like this, which could have wrangled its way in there. And you kind of think it that way, but sarcoidosis doesn't come from...
Yeah, so at the time, I definitely wasn't considering that. Having had some space...
Well, don't now.
Don't listen to Darren. He's an idiot.
Having had some space from the original diagnosis, I realized that there is a chance that it's connected to the fight or flight system and the stress and the way that I've dealt with stress in my life. Mm-hmm. Don't know for sure, but there's a chance that that's true. And if so, like, it is what it is, it sucks. Fucking sucks. Oh, sorry.
How did you come along? No, that's fine that you said fucking sucks. It's perfectly fine. Please. How'd you get past that then? I mean, now you're moving on. You're not working at the dollar store because you were spewing up blood. You go get this diagnosis, and then
and what's different about this too is, we talk about the first big adversity overcame, and that's getting clean. This is different. This is not leaving something behind. Now you have to learn how to live with something.
Yeah, that's absolutely right on the head. Is that like, it's entirely different because you don't have the option to leave it behind. It's just, you got to figure out a way to exist with it. And I think that's where a lot of the lessons in my life about meeting myself where I'm at and being honest about who I am and what I'm capable of. And not when I say who I am, what I mean is what body I have, what my lot in life is, what my restrictions are, as well as my capabilities, and figuring out how to sort of come to a place of understanding that I'll be more successful being honest about who I am, and I'm more likely to find my niche being like, when I say who I am, like I said, about like the reality of my life, that my life is what it is. And I think that like I really only started to feel better about my illness stuff when I found my stride, when I found things that I could do in spite of my illness. And I started to realize that in some ways having an illness was an advantage because I'm disabled, like the government did a whole bunch of investigating and everything and decided to put me on the disability program. That means that if I try something and it fails, I'm not out of house and home like most people, right? So in some ways it turned out to be an advantage, but I couldn't see that until I figured out how to be creative with the situation I'm actually in and not the situation I felt like I should be in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And one of the things that I find really interesting is, thinking about you in this situation. One of the biggest challenges I believe you probably went through is all of a sudden now, because of no fault of your own, your potential or your options for what you do in life has been, drastically reduced. Not going to be an Olympic athlete with fibromyalgia, right?
Yeah.
And I'm giving an extreme example for a reason here, but like there's a lot of things that if you had the desire to do that, now that's been stripped away. Even if it's not something you ultimately would end up doing, the fact that that option's not there, it's a lot to deal with. But one of the things that you said that I find really refreshing because I've talked about this before with a number of people. I think I heard Mike Rowe talk about this for the first time. You always hear people say that you should, follow your passion, chase your passion when it comes to your career. And I think Mike Rowe said it better than anybody. He said, figure out what you're good at and bring your passion with you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of where you're at, is it's like, okay, well, this is where I'm at, being realistic about, you said meeting yourself where you are. This is what I can do. This is what I'm capable of. Let's just be real, take ownership of it and do it. And then bring that passion along with you. And that's how, you can find peace and harmony and ultimately whatever it is you choose to do. And the things that you're doing today, such as graphic design and your podcast.
Is that where that led you to after that? Is that how you started in graphic design, or did you go work for somebody else?
Actually, I was I was working for someone else for a short while through a program called Custom Employment that Work BC, which is sort of like, I guess, a government-funded help the people thing. And they helped me with something called Custom Employment, and it led to a really, really cool job, but I ended up having to move. And so when I moved, that job was no longer there. Uh-huh. And so I,
if you're not watching us live or going back and watching the video, Kara's laughing at us because I'm teasing Darren with a beer.
I still said thank you, though.
He's like a dog, like putting the food in front of him.
I did say thank you.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Right back to you. I had a podcast with this guy. Can you believe that?
So you worked for this program that helped you get started.
Yeah, I actually did motion capture marker work and stuff like that.
What? Motion
the
what?
hell?
Like, animation, motion capture markers. Like those suits that they wear that tell the computer.
With all the little balls on them.
Yeah.
Oh, I have seen that.
I have suit with those on them.
Not that one. Oh. Please, God.
I have a green one and a blue one, and it's got a...
No, that's not what we're talking about.
But yeah, she's fantastic. So shout out to 3x3 Designs. But I ended up having to leave that and I moved to where I live now, which is Vancouver Island. And there, I didn't know anybody. It's not easy to find employment that works, that's flexible with, pain issues and needing to take time off and all of that stuff. So I wasn't sure what to do, but I kept getting commissions, without having a graphic design company. People would just reach out to me word of mouth and ask me to do design work for them, whether it was logos or sometimes it was just drawings and stuff like that. And so I decided that I was going to do that. And I just one day, I've been drawing my whole life and am considered to be fairly skilled. But yeah, one day I just decided, okay, well, then that's what I'm going to do. And I made a website and told everyone I was an artist, and it worked.
There you go. Hey, you can bullshit with the best of them, right?
Yeah, so that's basically how Fernstrom started.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you about something else. You have a podcast called the Conquest of Bliss.
Mm-hmm.
How come I haven't been on your show yet?
Well,
no.
Would you like a summary, or would you like me to go through everything?
Just
Lord have mercy. No, but Carrie, you started this podcast called The Conquest of Bliss, and we will be linking to it. If you are watching, you can actually see where you can find it on Facebook, facebook.com/The Conquest of Bliss.
Oh, I can't do it.
If you're listening, it'll be in your show notes.
You got it right there. Just
Absolutely. She gave us
there
a little Vanna
Boom.
White. Perfect.
You can point down.
Yeah. Look, guys,
Boom.
this is real. And if you're listening, it's in your show notes. So whatever app you're using, you can find it there. But the Conquest of Bliss, it's about finding happiness. And you've been through a lot. I'd like, first of all, I'm one of those guys that I'm a simple guy. Can you help our audience by defining in your own words what happiness is?
Okay, so I actually tend to use the words happiness and well-being in conjunction with each other because happiness is so ambiguous. When I talk about happiness, I'm really talking about overall sense of well-being, calmness, but there are many kinds of happiness, which is why I kind of stick to it, is because it depends, right? I talk to a guy who has psychopathy, and his experience of happiness is very different from my own and stuff like that. But yeah, when I talk about happiness on the show, overall, what I'm talking about is well-being and the ability to flow through the many emotions that life gives you while still coming through it feeling content. Happy. That's the problem, is that I want the word happy.
Well, that's why I asked the question, because
At the end of the day, you can put your head on the pillow and go,
well,
good.
here's why I asked the question. I mean, seriously, it's one of those things where if you ask people, everybody wants to be happy. It's like, okay, well, what's happiness for you? And it's like, well, hell, I don't know.
And you can't measure it, really. Right?
No, but it's one of those
degrees?
things. I'm a firm believer that in order to achieve something, you have to be able to define it or write it down or, see it, right? You got to have a vision for what it is.
No.
No?
No.
Darren, who's asking you anyways?
I'm telling you, it's an emotion. You don't have to be able to write it down and define
No, I know.
it.
You don't.
It's like saying, I need to know what your degree of happiness is today.
Well, not like
Let's
that.
put it on a scale. Can we measure it 1 through 10? I'm fucking happy, okay? I was until you asked me that damn question. Now I'm getting pissed. Now,
or you could be Darren Flanagan, and God only knows what the hell's going on in that head. But seriously, I asked the question because a lot of people, when they're searching for happiness in their relationship or happiness in their job, I think a lot of people struggle with, first of all, just trying to define what that is. I think a lot of people don't even know if they are happy.
Right.
You know
right.
what I mean?
It's
It's crazy to think about something that's that simple of a concept, but yet so many people don't know.
It's deceivingly complex.
It is. It actually is. And that's why I started there. And I think that if you're listening or watching right now, you're probably going, yeah, you know what? If I'm thinking about it for myself, I don't know that I really, because even for me, like I feel happy most of the time because I've gotten to a point in my life where I'm achieving the things that I want. I'm spending time the way that I want to generally. I'm around people that I want to be with till I podcast.
Usually.
But it's like if you sat down and you said, Jake, tell me exactly why you're happy, or tell me what that happiness is in your life, I think I would struggle to articulate it, honestly.
So, walking around with a warm, fuzzy feeling inside you all the time.
But I don't. Do you? Well, I don't want to know what you... I don't answer that question.
I was waiting for that.
But I mean, seriously, is this something that you struggle with when you talk about it with people?
No, not really, because I talk about it a lot.
Wow.
But I think that, yeah, like it's a useful word. Like, I mean, it's useful, especially in the context of being a show about happiness, because it has so many meanings. Like, you might think that would run out of topics really fast, but it does not. But
so
like, I think
let me simplify this for us. All right. Because I know what I'm saying is very
cut
ambiguous.
her
I
off.
know, because I'm setting her up for failure, but I'm gonna bring her back on the path for success. Okay, I'm going somewhere.
First
I
thing,
promise.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry
There.
that I have to podcast with Darren Flanagan. But let's put this in a real world scenario. If somebody were to say, I'm not happy in my job or my work, and I want to be happy in my job or my work, how do you help somebody figure out what that looks like?
so if I were tasked with helping someone figure out why they weren't happy in their job or their work, I would first find out what it is that they enjoy about their work and why they choose to do it. So then you have an idea of where the value is for them. And then you ask where they are lacking in value. Oftentimes it's things like meaning or recognition, things like that. And then you help them to find categories or types of work that would be similar, like that would retain the value of their current work, or at least some of it, while adding other things to it. That's how I would address that.
Okay, this is perfect. Can I stop you here?
Yeah.
Why are you raising your hand, Darren?
Just because we're on screen, I have a question.
What is your question, Darren?
Well, I mean, like Kara is saying, as you're going through that and the meaning, and one of those is, like, do you enjoy making a product or solving a problem? Because some people, they don't realize that. It's like, why do people like being a chef or a builder or something? It's like, I want to see a finished product. I feel like I'm happy when I see that finished product. Some people are like, no, I'm happy when I've solved an issue or a problem.
Well, that's perfect, Darren. Yeah. That's perfect. And I'm going to expand on that too, because you also talked about, meaning and, recognition. So when it comes to happiness, you might have somebody that's in a job. Let's say that they make widgets, right? They work on an assembly line making widgets, and they're like, I don't understand the meaning of my job. But, maybe it's a matter of perspective. Somebody sitting down and explaining how all these various complexities in the system work to create a device that makes people's lives better or whatever. So it could just be a matter of that person having better perspective on the job that they have, or finding something that has more meaning to them, right? But then you might have another person that is a doctor, and they know for sure that what they do has meaning and purpose, but they work in an environment where they never get recognition,
right.
And maybe the people that they're around are toxic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is why I bring this up, because when it comes to happiness, it's not a one-size-fits-all conversation, and it can actually be a topic that's very complicated. But I think a lot of times we don't approach it like it's something that needs to be diagnosed and understood.
But if
it's
we
like, well, I
listen
should just be happy. It's a feeling that should come from within.
Can you measure success?
No,
Same
you cannot.
thing, right?
Exactly.
Success is totally different. And somebody may not give a crap about their work. Their happiness comes from the fact that every Friday there's a paycheck, and now I can actually go do the things. I don't care what my job is. I need to make, enough money so I can go do these things that I enjoy for my hobbies. And that is totally different. And that's where their happiness comes in, and they're willing to do it.
So does that help kind of illustrate how this can be such a complex issue for people?
Yeah, and I mean it even goes deeper. Like there's different kinds of happiness, like as far as the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's awe, there's flow, there's pride. There's a whole bunch of them, and I can't remember them all off the top of my head.
I got to listen to more of her episodes.
Joy. So there's categories of emotions that are considered happiness, as well as the sense of contentment, as well as it's often used to mean meaning. A happy person is a person who feels that they have a lot of meaning and purpose in their life. And so, it's incredibly complicated. And like you said, a lack of happiness needs to be much more diagnosed than not.
God, you made it even more complex just there. Like I'd never thought of it in that terms, but as soon as you said that, I have moments of joy when I'm with my kids and we're all just belly laughing over something, ridiculous and stupid. But then I have moments of awe when I'm in nature and, the weather is perfect and I've got this view, and it's just like, you feel like life is bigger than you. So you're right. There's very different types of happiness.
I wonder what flow is.
Yeah. What is flow?
So flow is, so I actually had a guy on my show called Paul Chrismer who talked about hockey. So I don't know if you guys are hockey people.
Yes, love hockey.
Jake
Okay.
actually, well, would you consider it playing hockey? Did you play hockey? Or did
I
you
was
just
in the rink, flailing around, getting injured, getting in the way sometimes.
Back in
But yes, I played hockey.
high school, junior high?
So he talks about, the moment that the player sees the puck and they start skating across the ice and they know exactly where it's going to go, and time basically stands still for them and they're in a moment of flow. And if someone called them by their name near them and they look over and suddenly they're not able to do what they were doing, that flow has been broken. And the same can be true if you're an accountant who loves spreadsheets. That's flow. When you zone so far into something that you enjoy that the world ceases to exist.
I had the same experience with racing.
I have that every day.
Do you?
Oh, yeah. When I'm right in the middle working on that spreadsheet and going through those contracts and moving them along. No.
The formulas and the auto sums, they just really get you going.
Oh, yes. I use that auto sums from across multiple pages, and I remember how to connect them all.
I get that way when I work outside, like in the yard and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You get in the zone.
Well, I mean, this morning, honestly, the whole part of it was the zone. I was actually doing some work, but I was at home working instead of coming to the office right away. I had my cup of coffee. I had the right music on in the background, and it was just
cranking
all
it
this
out.
is going on, and I could smell the coffee, and I'm working, and it's just all flowing along the way it should. And I would say I was more content, but I was partially happy because I had my coffee and my music, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's cool.
Yeah, so happiness is complicated.
When did you start that? I mean, was there what was your light bulb moment to start the podcast?
Okay, yeah. So March 8th, 2020 was the first episode. I just had to film.
Time.
Actually, it was like 2 weeks before COVID, and I was so disappointed because I already worked from home, right? So now everybody could do a podcast. I was like, damn it.
Yeah.
But basically, so for a long time, I've been what I would call like casually studying. Like I do read like the NCBI stuff and like scholarly articles and stuff, a lot of that stuff about well-being and happiness and neuroscience and all of the ways that those ideas, behavioral sciences, tie in together. And I find that I have a lot of people that would come to me and ask me specific questions. It's funny, I'd be single and they'd ask me relationship questions and stuff like that. And so I was doing a lot of that stuff on the side and it was exhausting. So I was like, oh, I should do something for this. And so I just asked my Facebook. I said, what do you guys think? Blog, vlog, or podcast? And it was overwhelmingly podcast. So I went to freemusicarchive.com, downloaded a song, mixed it into an intro, and started with a laptop or a tablet and a $30 mic.
Well, good. And how's your experience? How's your experience been podcasting so far?
Honestly, it's life-giving. It's so fantastic. There's been nothing in this life that I've enjoyed more. Like I get a lot of really good feedback. People say that it really changes their perspective. Someone stopped self-harming because of my show.
Wow, that's great.
Stuff like that. So it's like, it makes me feel real good. And
Would you say it makes you happy?
It absolutely makes me happy.
There you go.
Oh, that's good.
And
Yeah, I feel about the podcast too. Every week it's like Christmas that day. It's like we're podcasting today.
Yes, we love it. It's so and like you, yeah, it's very fulfilling. And we've learned from so many people like yourself that come on, and it's funny. We'll have times when it's work, and you're trying to figure out how to get it done, and you're grinding away, and then you'll have that example of somebody reaching out and saying, "Hey, this is how your podcast affected me." And just one person reaching out can just really make a huge difference. So if you want to give Darren and I some motivation to keep going, just email us at podcast@beer.business and tell us how great we're doing.
Tell us how
I'm sorry.
awful
Tell
we're
us how
doing.
great Kara's doing. I mean, if we're going to be honest, yes.
I did want to comment, by the way. I think that the fact that you got beer.business is so clever. Like, I'm in love with that instead of beerandbusiness.com, you went with beer.business. Perfect.
I cannot believe that we were able to get that.
It's probably like $250 for the year.
Yeah, like it was one of those domains that when I stumbled into it, trying, because we had the name before we had the domain, believe it or not. So we had the branding and all that stuff done. And we were agonizing over domains for months. And I never searched for beer.business because it was so obvious that somebody already owned that. To me, that was like beer.com. Like, there's no fucking way that one's available. And I was getting so frustrated one night. I'm finally just like searching everything. I'm like, I might as well search beer.business. And it was available. And I'm like, holy shit. My hand was shaking when I was hitting buy. I'm like, oh my God, somebody's going to buy it while I'm trying to check out. I cannot believe it was available.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I know. I was so shocked. So I'm not letting that one go. Cannot believe we got beer.business. Yeah.
Good job.
That's called luck, is what that's called.
Luck of the Irish.
Yeah, luck of the Irish.
So you've enjoyed it since you started your podcast.
Yeah.
How often are you consistent, like weekly, bi-weekly, or are you just depending whenever?
Whenever the hell you want to.
No.
That's just kind of what we do.
Consistency is key.
That's right. We are
My first few months, I did twice a week. At the time, I was editing my own shows. And then I actually have a friend who is an audio engineer. And he was basically like, let me help you. And so...
Please let me
Bless your heart, is what we say here in the South.
And so he started editing it. And then it sort of tapered off a little bit because I was doing more of the Artstrom stuff because I did a 3-minute 2D animation which takes a lot of time. And then I've been having some issues with my health and stuff. So I've kept it at once a week. I release every Thursday since probably last summer. And I really enjoy it. I'm very consistent. I was doing a game show for a short while, but I was having technical issues, and I definitely just need a partner to help with it. I have a partner, but a business partner. So I was doing like a game show thing that was the Conquest of Fun, where I was just asking random questions and giving away gifts like this.
Oh, I like that.
It's homemade.
That's a conquest of what's down
Bliss.
at the bottom.
It says the Conquest of Bliss podcast.
Okay.
That's awesome. So
wait, I want to get asked one of the questions. And what is when you were just on the microphone? Let me see. What's your tat on your wrist there? What's that say?
This wrist.
Your other tattoo.
It says Veni Vidi Vici, or Weni Witty Wiki, depending on how you read Latin.
And what does that mean?
I came, I saw, I conquered.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really good.
It's very on theme for conquest.
Yeah, well, I think that I hope you keep going and plowing along in podcasting. It's very rewarding, but it also is difficult. I think a lot of times, even hours, people see us, like, oh, you're sitting there drinking beer, like cutting up, having fun. It's like, yeah, it's a lot of work behind the scenes. Believe it or not, we actually
keep me sober. It is a lot of work.
You could imagine that.
No, you're not allowed to have another one until you do this. I do have one other question, because you say with your physical disabilities that you have, and you're self-employed and trying to run, and also the podcast, but trying to run that business when you have flare-ups more so, and that probably keeps you in bed more often. And I was scrolling back through when we had Brooke Roberts on with her depression, it was the same thing. It's like all of a sudden for her, the walls are closing in. She's self-employed. How do you have processes set up that your business can still continue while you can't?
Yes, I do. So number one is the art stuff, the drawing, the animation, the design, all of that is done on my phone. So I can do it from any location. If I'm stuck in the bathroom all day, or if I'm stuck in bed all day, or like we had a heat wave and I was stuck in an ice bath all day, I can do that from there. So that's the number one thing. As far as the podcast, I am always at least 4 episodes ahead. So I record ahead of time. My editor edits it, and the process for releasing is very streamlined, so that pretty much no matter what situation I'm in physically, I can make sure that it's done. I'm actually going to be releasing an episode after this. Cool. And so everything is kind of set up to appear a lot more cohesive from the outside, and but on the other side of it, there's a lot of, oh, okay, I'm stuck off for 2 weeks because my health is flaring up, or, just all sorts of different things. I have to go to the doctor, so I'm not available at this time. So I'll have to, release the episode on a schedule ahead of time. Scheduling apps really help with social media when I'm actually really behind because I've been pretty sick the last month. But, I have a scheduling app for releasing social media posts and stuff like that. So everything's kind of designed, every system is designed specifically to consider my health issues and the sometimes accompanying challenges with cognition and stuff like that.
Well, that's really smart, and glad to hear that, because, just like anything in life, I mean, if you've got, you're taking ownership, right? You know that these limitations exist, and you're preparing for it. And when these inevitable times happen, you've got systems in place to help you get through it. So I think that's really smart. And I really appreciate what you're doing. And I also appreciate you coming on today and being so forthcoming about, your story and what you've been through and what you've overcome, because I think this perspective is really, really important. And I always one of the things I like about hearing from people like you is it provides perspective. Right now there's people listening to this podcast that they're having challenges in their business, very real challenges, whether it's related to the government shutdowns or not, or if it's really severe, or, maybe their business is down 30% and, whatever the case might be. So you got all these varying degrees of where people might be. But you hear a story like yours, and then you look at your own challenges and you go, well, shit. Really? Like, why am I making such a big deal out of this? It's inspiring to know that people have gone through the stuff that you've been through and find a way, and not only find a way to get through it, but also to find happiness. And I think that's great. And we need more and more stories like this, because one of the things that I struggle with right now is the fact that we know so many people have been hurt through this pandemic. And if you go out to the mainstream media, news outlets, you go to social media, you don't hear enough stories like yours. You don't hear uplifting and motivating messages. What you get is, a lot of division, a lot of, people getting angry at each other. And that's not what we need right now.
Poor me. Well, negative news always seems to attract.
If it bleeds, it leads.
Yep. That's it.
But
Which sucks.
But that's our fault.
I'm gonna quote Kara. It fucking sucks.
It fucking sucks. It does. But that's our fault, and that's what. And going back to what you said, Kara, take ownership. A lot of people like, oh, the world is chaos because of the media and all that stuff. No, it's your damn fault for watching it. Don't watch it. Turn that off and seek out stuff like this, where you can hear stories from people that could literally change your life for the better.
There might be that one little thing that goes doop and puts that little tiny light on in your head, and you go, oh, I can do this.
Just like you had the experience where that one person reached out to you that said that they were harming themselves and stopped because of their podcast. Vice versa. If you're out there seeking out stuff like your message and podcasts that can make a positive difference in your life, all it takes is one episode. All it takes is one sentence from somebody. You know what I'm reminded of? Deborah Driggs came on the show a few months ago.
I had her on mine too. Oh, sorry.
Oh, did you really? Yes, she was awesome. So you know what she said to us that was a big game changer for me about purpose? I've been talking to people about purpose for my entire career. And she said, purpose is helping other people. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I have been complicating this issue all my life, and she just boiled it down in a sentence. One sentence. And it made a huge difference for me.
We've had a lot of people that it's like Vivia.
Yeah.
And we had her on,
God, yeah.
And then I get a phone call from a listener who says, how do I get in touch with her?
Yeah.
I want to photograph her.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we've had so many examples like that. So
yeah.
I feel like it's on all of us to seek stuff out like this. And I just want to encourage you to keep spreading your story, your message. I think it's a powerful one.
Because they're not going to get good advice from Jake and I. That's why we have to have good guests on the show.
Yes.
So
there's a reason why this is not just a talk show with me and Darren. We have to have guests. So I want to encourage our listeners to also subscribe to your podcast. It's The Conquest of Bliss. You can find it on your favorite podcast apps, or you can go to facebook.com/The Conquest of Bliss. It's right there on the screen. If you're watching right now, it's kind of easy to, ta-da, just go there.
There it is.
We're pointing at it. Go there.
Yeah, I'm just going to do
It's that
pointing
one,
now.
the Facebooky thing.
Really be cool.
It's the platform I'm not allowed on. Just go to that. You know what I'm talking about, Darren.
That could be all of them.
They locked me out of everything. It really pisses me off.
I can't
Still got my golden toilet, though.
Going to create my own internet now. I got 2 soup cans and a piece of string, and I'll be able to communicate.
I'm going to do my own social media thing. Psych, it's just a blog. That's what I did.
I don't know. Where the hell did Trump come from today? Talk about addiction problems. I have not done Trump in months.
Really?
I thought I conquered that. I guess I have not.
No.
He's back.
Thank God it's
At least
better
it's
than
not Nick
having-
Nolte.
Oh, Jesus. Thank God it's not Nick Nolte again.
Mike Tyson. I love Mike. But seriously, if you're listening, facebook.com/The Conquest of Bliss. It's in your notes, so you don't have to remember it. So go check her out. We really appreciate you coming on today, Kara. It's been really uplifting to hear somebody get through some of the stuff you have, and
Yes.
And we wish you
Thank
all
you.
the best. We wish you the success, all the
Thanks for
success in the
sharing
world
with
for your,
us.
yeah.
We appreciate that.
Thank
Wish
you
you
guys
all
so
the
much for
success for your
having
podcast.
me.
You're
It's
welcome.
been
Absolutely.
it's been a lot of fun.
Yes. So, folks, we really appreciate you tuning in. Again, remember, come see us next week, Wednesday, the 11th, at Line Creek, 4 to 6 o'clock if you're in the market. Look.
There we go.
I think we need to hire her. She's like the perfect Vanna. She's got our little chyrons there. She's pointing
It'd be
them
cool
out
as if her
perfectly.
hand actually came out and like went down and
We need a
touched
3D.
it. or something.
You do the little suit thing
Graphic
with the balls on it. Can't you figure this
She
out?
didn't take the job sewing balls on clothes. That's a totally different kind of job.
Yes. But come see us next week at Line Creek Brewery. Even if you don't meet your next client, you get to hang out with us and drink a beer, which is kind of cool.
And
4 to
the
6
good thing
o'clock.
is they can see us. They don't even have to talk to us, but we'll be in the same room.
You don't have to talk to Darren. How about that? There's an incentive for coming. So we'd love to see you. So, Kara, thanks again for coming on. This has been awesome. Folks, we will see you next week.
See